our 12th installment. Over these 12 weeks, we have been bringing you the voices of Black leaders, leaders from the nonprofit, business, and civic worlds, youth activists, and academic professionals, brought together to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on our Black and Brown communities specifically, and the disparities in healthcare, which become glaringly clear. The racial justice moment spurred by the murder of George Floyd in May. We have provided the numerous thought leaders featured in these discussions with the digital platform to be heard and to share their unique perspectives on the reality of being Black in America. These forums also allow us to have conversations which are unscripted, unedited, and to explore solutions for how we can all take responsibility, be allies in the fight for social justice, and play a role in moving our city forward. We're doing another deep dive today on the topic of back to school and the new look it will have this fall. When we left off at the end of last year, the schools were conducting classes virtually. And with the pandemic still here, we will be going back to classes virtually. Many mixed feelings about that whole experience from both sides of the laptop, so you may say. And we know that families cannot do this alone. So, this week's town hall addresses the challenges students and their families, caregivers, and teachers will face, particularly in our underserved Black and Brown communities, and how some local organizations are working to innovate their education support programs for this new dynamic we're all facing. We will hear examples of how they are supporting students' educational and mental wellness needs during this fall session of e-learning, both in CPS and other school districts. And as always, at the conclusion of this hour, we aim to leave on a positive note, a note of encouragement and of hope, and hopefully some solutions. For our viewers on Facebook, good afternoon. So glad you are with us. I'm Val Warner from Windy City Live, just in case you had no clue. If you submitted questions beforehand, we might be able to present one or two of them if time allows. So please follow in with this discussion and submit those questions, and we'll do our best to get to them. All right, I want to introduce our panelists right now. First up, Bradley K. Johnson, Director of Core Programs at Build Incorporated. Bradley grew up in the Austin neighborhood and has nearly 29 years of experience working with high-risk youth and young adults, working for Build Inc., which Build stands for Broader Urban Intervention and Leadership Development. He is responsible for engaging local public schools, service providers, and other value holders to provide trauma-informed intervention, prevention, and building future programs for young people across the greater West Side and Fuller Park, Bronzeville on the South Side. So prior to joining Build, Bradley spent the last 9 years with St. Joseph Services, also a nonprofit serving youth and adults in the Austin and Humboldt Park neighborhoods. And during his time at SJS, Bradley served in various leadership roles and was an integral part of the development of the program design, the community collaborations, and building the organization's profile. Also, Bradley worked 12 years at the Cook County Juvenile Detention Center, working with some of their most troubled youth. Currently, chairs the Public Safety Committee of the Austin Quality of Life Plan, as a founding member of West Side Rising Coalition, and sits on the board of Austin Coming Together. That's Bradley. All right, next up, Leslie Chestnut, Program Manager for Community Schools Program, Metropolitan Family Services, Midway site. You started at MFS in 2013 as a resource coordinator overseeing a 21st Century Community Learning Center program at a school located in the city's Clearing neighborhood. She oversees 30 out-of-school time programs in 28 CPS and South Suburban school sites. She is also a 12-year veteran working as a partner to CPS in school-based services. She is a proud mother of a kindergartner and a wife of 8 years, Chicago born and raised. And finally, Jarima Gurum, founder and executive director of Burst Into Books. Innovator, educator, community activist, all of those things you are as a ninth grade physical science instructor. Jarima teaches over 100 students the principles of physics and chemistry. She believes it is truly important to help her students to be innovators and to seek to be change agents in this world. Now, prior to teaching high school, Jarima taught at the elementary school level, ranging from kindergarten to middle school. Her diverse instructional experience aided her in being able to provide differentiated lessons that met all students' needs. Through data tracking, she was also able to address the misconceptions students had about the content in which she was teaching. Also, challenge their problem solving and critical thinking skills, something that we will get into in this conversation and how we do that e-learning style. In 2018, Jarima founded Burst Into Books NFP, a nonprofit organization that is focused on rebuilding our village through advocacy, through the arts, through educational and family programming. Their mission is to empower the community through teaching cultural literacy, financial literacy, digital literacy, reading, and writing. Say that 10 times fast. Welcome to each and every one of you for joining us for this Do You Hear Me?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, yes. You know, Jarima, I ended with you. Why don't we start with you? What are your thoughts about our current situation and teaching experience in class versus remote?
I think that this is just a very unique time for parents, teachers, school districts at all. I think we're all just trying to figure it out. And I think the best thing that we can say is that we need to be able to be working together to problem solve. I'm a teacher. And so for me, the idea in 2 weeks, I'm welcoming freshmen online is a very interesting concept because there's so many components that you miss from just building that culture in the classroom. And they're coming from elementary school to high school. That's the transition. And then my content in itself is science. So it's a very hands-on application-based subject. And so I think just overall, we have to be innovative because I really don't see us coming out of this going back to school the same way. So whether or not we know what to do now, I don't think that going back to just going back to school, paper and pen is just going to be the answer as well. So I think this is a time for us all to kind of reimagine what education looks like.
Leslie, what are your thoughts?
I echo Jarima. I think like many of us who are working in this industry and addressing these issues, I have the dual role of being a parent who's just as concerned about what's going to happen with my own child during this time, and also as a service provider, again, just trying to find ways in which we can be innovative to address these needs. And it is causing us to act on a dime, and it is forcing us into a lot of uncomfortable spaces with having to transition significantly with the work that we're doing and still meet the needs of our students. And so it is perplexing at times, it's frustrating and overwhelming, but I am really excited about some of the innovation that's coming out of this. And again, I too agree. I don't think that we're going to go back to a traditional setting anytime soon. And this is setting us on a path to try something different and hopefully keep up with what's happening with the 21st century.
Bradley, what are your thoughts?
Well, you know what? Just like Leslie and Jarima said, a lot of what they said I agree with because it's true. And I'm also a parent of CPS children. So I have two kids, a 6 and an 8-year-old. And so plus I have a program which was school-based. A lot of my after-school programs are based inside of school. So with this, it's just like an upheaval. But what I love about it is that out of necessity, out of desperation and all those things, we had to come together and make things happen. So that forced communication, that is forcing silos to break down. I see some hopefulness in all of this. Yeah, nobody wants to wear the mask and all that, but we ran a camp just finished and in person. So that was a doing, but I do believe that there's no turning back. I think that it has changed the way education is going to happen. And I think that because it's exposed the inequity that's happening in communities and in homes, I think that because all kids got to do it remotely, but now you're going to see the differences of what it takes for kids to learn and what was missing. Teacher said it all along, but nobody was listening, but now you can't deny it. And so I think that it's some innovation that's got to come out of this.
Right. And Jarima, you touched on that because you are going to have to be very innovative because you're teaching freshmen. Like you said, first they're transitioning from 8th grade to high school, which we all have been there, done that. And we know what that is like. Can you imagine even what it would feel like to not only be able to do it in person, but to do it virtually? You have to get to know these students. The difference between this school year and the end of the school year is that last year, teachers were in session with their kids for a good, 6 months or so, maybe not the whole school year, but they did have them the fall and the beginning of the spring. So there was that human connection and they got to know their students. Now you're starting off a brand new school year with all new students and you don't have that, human connection, that human interaction. How will you go about being innovative to get to know your students and be there for them as teacher?
And even you just said that, and that's so important because as a teacher, you can't teach unless you know your children, right? And you know your students. And so a big part of what we've been talking about, even amongst our circle of teachers, is just how can we still have that intimacy and build a community. Similar to what Leslie said, I also do my work with my nonprofit. And that's the main thing children were saying is that I felt like I lost my community. You know what I mean? Like you just sending me assignments, you just sending me this and that. But what really made it fun is that we were able to kind of joke about the question that person asked in class and, just kind of build those type relations. And so in the Zoom world, I definitely have been playing around with the idea of, like breakout rooms and being able to really connect a lot of our conversations to current times that I always was doing in my classroom. But that's really been, to be honest, a question that I keep asking myself, because it's so important. I can't teach without knowing who I'm teaching. And so, I just think that's important overall. And so that definitely has to be something we're considering, that we are taking that human connection out of being on Zoom.
Yeah, you said something important just there, like the breakout rooms. Like, how do you even have a breakout room on Zoom? Is it just about scheduling, maybe just scheduling 2 or 3 students at a time? I guess these are all the things that teachers are faced with thinking about now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think the other thing is, as we talked about earlier about being innovative, I actually don't want to look back on how I did it before, like how you said we'd start the year a certain way, because I also question if that was actually the best way to do it anyway, right? I think that there are so many different aspects to learning that we can, the flipped classroom model, just trying to think of all these different aspects we could pull into our learning spaces so that students still feel connected. So I think it's really important about just thinking outside the box.
Yeah, Leslie, you have a kindergartner, right?
I do.
So this will be your son or daughter?
My daughter.
Your daughter.
Our daughter, Nola.
She is going into school, starting her whole school career online as a kindergartner. What are your concerns as a parent?
Well, it's the same thing. It's about the building community. We had a bit of a tail end of that experience before we broke for the summer, and it was hard. And for a 5-year-old child who just did not have the attention span to sit through those classes, it was a struggle, and also just a struggle as a working parent. And so my husband and I really had a difficult time just balancing, trying to keep up with her schedule, trying to make sure that we're doing the offline work. And it's a necessary thing to do at this point, but it was rough. And our daughter was just, I don't want to do this anymore. But we had the summer to really just talk with her about the whys and how we're going to do this, and that it's not forever. And so she's understanding just the importance of like what we're going through and why we're doing this first safety measure. But this is the very beginning of her big school, and that she's having to face this remotely. And so I hope that years down the road, we can look back on this and just really appreciate the uniqueness of this time, and that this is history. Like, we're just living through a historical time period, and that she could reflect on just like what that meant to her if she even remembers this. So, yeah.
Bradley, you said you have a 6 and an 8-year-old. Mm-hmm. We know what the work you do in the community and with Build, but let's talk about Bradley, the parent. What's that looking like for you? What kind of conversations are you having at your home? Maybe you can help somebody who's watching, because, all us parents are having some sort of conversations.
Well, you know what? I feel, I'm honored and I feel blessed that with Build, we had to become flexible where they allowed us to work remotely. Since I direct programs and I have managers and different people, I'm able to delegate some tasks. And I was able to work from home because my wife, she's actually a nurse. So she works at Georgia Hospital. Hey, Alicia. And she works, nights. And so I was the teacher. And definitely for my son, he was in kindergarten. And to get him, for anybody to think that because they work remotely, that doesn't mean a parent has to be as involved. You definitely have to. My son, he's intelligent, but he was disappear just like that. And like with the sessions, all I heard was yelling, and all the kids, they're all yelling and noisy and all that, with all the movement, and then also the work. And then even before, there was different demands. So there's also inequity and differences in schools. And so depending on the school they go to, it's going to depend on the kind of work they're doing. And so I had very involved teachers, but man, that meant I was super involved. And so that was tough to go to, and still have to manage work. All that is very hard. And so I'm looking forward to the fall. It's going to be difficult because I also have staff who are parents, and I can't afford that. And then the other factor of many of us, if you live in Chicago, unless, some different circumstances, you're going to live in a brown or a Black community if you're Black or brown. Right. And because of that, the higher incidence of COVID. So I had staff members who got to be at home with their kids and also lose loved ones, also experience death and all, those things like that. And then the unrest and this, that impacted our communities like dead on. And so to deal with those things, and then even to go to work every day, or me to show my smiling face, but inside there was a lot of turmoil going on because things have to change. So, staying at home and all those things still going on. I don't even have a secret recipe for that other than employers have the flexibility to help.
Yeah. I'm listening to you, and I think we can all relate to this. And we've had conversations about this with other parents and experts on Windy City Live just this week, and with teachers. And you talk about, being flexible and how you have to be there for your kid, but yet we all have jobs to do as parents in managing the schedule of your child or children remotely at home while you're still trying to make sure you're working and getting your job done so you can pay the bills is a very daunting task. As a matter of fact, I'm thinking about like what I went through with trying to do the show and do everything and still, keep up with all my sons. We were missing stuff left and right. Things fell through the cracks. And I'd like to say, and Jarima, maybe you can speak about this. I just felt, and thank goodness at my son's school, there was a level of patience and grace that was given with these kids, because these are unprecedented times and there's no way to manage or to keep it all on track, especially when parents are not teachers. Do you feel like maybe there's a little bit of special grace that can be given out on the teacher side, Jarima?
I do. And I echo, I don't know if I say that, I'm a mother as well. I have an 8-year-old son. And so I think that a lot of times managing being a teacher, like I'm trying to teach while he's in class as well, and all these different factors, like I understand when, for instance, I'm a teacher myself, and it was a couple of assignments we didn't get to as well, because it wasn't that we couldn't get to it, but while he has Spanish class, I'm also having office hours, and so it's just a lot of things I think that's going on. And I believe that's when communication has to be the strongest during this time. I know that we have I was so excited when they took away like the end of the year testing and, all the different things, because it's an unneeded pressure that students, parents, and educators don't need to have at that time. And I think that because of that, it also pushed us to say, well, what are other measurements? Because was that even the best measurement in the first place? And so I think, at the end of the day, it's really about communication. When we did fall short, me and his teacher had a really great relationship, and she'll be like, hey, it's fine. I understand. Just get it in by this day, and the same thing I think has to go into the fall, because at the end of the year, we were caught off guard, right? I was in class one day, and over the weekend, I had to pack up my stuff that Monday, right? And so, schools weren't prepared. Some didn't have the technology, X, Y, and Z. And even though we're going into this fall a little bit more prepared, there still needs to be a level of grace and patience And to be honest, we need to be able to have ways that we're equipping parents to be this teacher, as Bradley was talking about. There was a lot of platforms that I don't use in high school. So him in elementary school, I'm like, okay, how do you log on here? Like, what's this connection? And that takes a lot of time. And so I hope that schools are thinking about that, like having maybe a seminar or something for parents, like, because we're in this together. Like, I can't just log in on September 8th and think that he's good. I know that that's not true. I need to be just as well versed on those platforms as he is. If not, we're all going to be frustrated, you know?
Yeah, very good point. And that leads me to my next question for you, Leslie, and all of you, but we'll start with you, Leslie, is, how can, in your opinion, CPS or any school district leadership be more intentional about providing information to parents throughout the school year to ensure that they have the necessary tools they need, as Jarima just alluded to better assist their children with learning remotely? Do you have any thoughts or ideas about that?
Yeah, we're partners with CPS. My program directly works similar to Bradley. Before COVID, all of our programming was conducted at the school site. And so we have very close relationships with our CPS partners. And so we do see from the ground some of the struggles that CPS is faced with outreach. And also on the flip side, just the parents' ability to be able to respond to those resources. And so it's a really interesting mix of the inability to reach all the parents through the best of CPS's efforts, and also the parents' demands for resources that may not be available at this time. And so where we come in is trying to bridge the gap in assisting in conveying those messages. We may have contact points in which we can reach parents that our CPS partners can't. And so we too are trying to deliver the message of, if your child needs a computer, to the best of your ability, call this phone number that CPS has provided, go to their website, inquire about how your child can procure a device. We are working with them to also just provide other resources that our CPS partners may not be able or have accessible to them. And so we're doing our best to bridge that gap as well. But it's very real when you have parents who have connectivity and internet issues. They don't have a computer at home. They're trying to access this stuff off of a mobile phone, and information might be outdated. So a phone call home it does no good if the phone number doesn't work. And so there's some very real struggles out there that in some cases there are going to be families that miss the communications or are very delayed in receiving those. But within our controls, we are definitely trying to help pass that message along, that the CPS is going above and beyond in this instance to try to make sure that our families are not left without.
Right. Bradley, can you talk about Build specifically and what they're doing to help support students, parents with any kind of additional resources to more successfully transition from in-class to in-home learning? Should we still be in this pandemic throughout the whole school year?
Right. Well, so I would say we started back when we were first, did the shelter in place, where we did a scan of inventory. We surveyed all of our participants. Do you have a device? Do you have internet? We found that a lot of them were sharing a device, even if they had one in the house, it was shared. And so we actually raised some money, and we were able to purchase Chromebooks for our students who did not have them. But then also we had to get creative and really reach out to our partners about what internet services are available, what's affordable, what can they actually get and have. And also we even did some hotspots that we're able to use and share with our community. Another thing is we became a mediator, or an intermediary, where we were relaying messages to the community. We actually have done community walks where we actually canvassed the immediate neighborhood around us, just sharing information so that the neighborhood knows. Because what I've learned is that many times the people who need services the most don't get the communications. They don't get the information. They don't know what resources exist. And so also partnering with Austin Coming Together, Build, we partnered in Austin Coming Together, the 15th District Police Department, our schools, just any relevant information, whether it's passing out food, because we learned that food was an issue, access to food was a problem, to the internet and everything else. And so it's just been a cycle, and it evolves. it just continues to evolve of what's going to be necessary and what's needed, even delivering stuff. We drop it, over their gate and, take off, just so they can get care packages. So we did think to all of our students that included materials, so that we did web-based sessions. So we do a lot of social emotional learning and development. We do academics, but we learned that our kids need a lot of emotional support. So we offered space for our young people as well as their parents to just talk about how they're feeling, and get those things through, and then share resources that way. We also have a clinical department that we did different sessions about wellness, self-care, things like that, so that they could deal with things. And also we actually had to do some work with our crisis response team of helping families who were dealing with domestic abuse, helping them even find new places to live. But there was like no one thing that happened. It was like multiple things.
Right.
Being tuned in and staying connected.
Yeah, absolutely. Having to pivot. I think that's something that, we're all dealing with. I think I'm the rare one in this bunch. My seventh grader, soon to be seventh grader, is actually going back in the campus.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, oh wow, it's right. Yeah, oh wow. We don't have that represented here except for me. He's going to be a seventh grader at Morgan Park Academy, and they have made the decision they did give the option to parents to have their kids go stay at home and do remote learning, but they are opening up their campus. So talk about, the difficult decisions. And we've had talks and talks and talks. And Max was like, I want to go to school. I mean, he's going to have to wear the mask. They're going to be separated. There's different pods and ways they're going to do the curriculum and teach. So the adjustments have been made, but there's that still angst and, concern. And we've been seeing it on the news where schools who have decided to open up their campuses within 2 or 3 weeks, it's the whiplash effect, and they're back home. So I don't know. I don't think I know what the answer is. And I think that's okay to say, right? Like I've been seeing these campaigns that say, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay not to know the answer, right?
Exactly.
It is.
Well, let's talk. Bradley, you talked a little bit about you talked a lot bit about some of the things that you guys are doing at Build, but I want you to talk specifically to your Live and Lit program. That's something that you guys do for high school youth?
Yeah. And so our education services, Building Futures, they work with young people who have a desire to post-secondary education. They want to go to college. And so it was virtual. And so they created this program, talk about pivoting and being creative and innovative. There was no was Live and Lit. What that did
Live and Lit, sorry.
I know, I saw, you had a little jazzy spelling, but it did not exist. But what they were able to do was create virtual experiences for the kids. So the kids it's a forum for them to talk about the latest thing they want to talk about. We have our staff with them. It's kind of almost like a podcast kind of setting. Of course, we had to do like Grubhub gift cards, so the kids got food delivered to their house while they're on the call. They've actually gone to the theater virtually, Goodman Theater. They've done a few other things, virtual escape room, a lot of different things, but a fun social way to get young people to not forget what was going on, but to remember that life is happening still right now, and that even in a different setting, you could create relationships, you can experience things. But I think a big part of Live and Lit was building on that hope that our kids, that there's something greater and there's more out there and there's things that they can still be involved in. But that was so much fun. I mean, they had different topics. They did self-care. They created like hand scrubs, all types of stuff. They always were doing something, and it was active to the point where kids wanted to be available to be in it, because sometimes it's hard to get them to show up to stuff, but they were logging on every time. So it was pretty dope.
Right. Yeah. You know what? That's another component, because in in person versus remote learning, you are missing a lot of that social connection, that human connection that we all need as adults and kids. Can you all speak to how that's affected your lives from the parent standpoint and also from all the work you're doing in the communities? We can start with you, Dreama.
Yeah, I would say on the parent side, in the beginning of this pandemic, it was actually okay. I felt like my life and my schedule is so busy that that break was actually like, okay, God, I hear you. It was actually a needed time. But then you start getting the cabin fever, and you start getting the, you know, it's a difference being at home by choice versus you feel by force, and so I think that started to impact. And then as a mother, I started to realize how it was impacting my son. And so actually about a month ago, we had to really have some really good conversations because he was really becoming, I don't even want to say like depressed, but really just like, this sucks. Like,
Yeah.
like,
Real
real stuff. Like, we normally are in Florida for vacations. We're normally, we always drive down south to visit my family. And so I think it was one thing, okay, school ended. Okay, but we still got this. You know what I mean? We still have this. And then as it was kept being a no and no and no camp this year, he's like, what can I do? And so just making him feel like, okay, I understand, but also, I think as a parent, you don't, like as you were just saying, as your child going back to school, like, okay, I'm nervous about you getting together with these people, even if it's a small setting. And so now he's a little bit better, but I will say that it definitely has been an in and out, even for me emotionally, just not being able to be around individuals. But as far as my programming, it just really lends to the fact that if this is happening in my home, I know this is happening in homes all over. And so we started to do a lot of virtual town halls with families and just having an opportunity for them to speak out and just kind of share what were some of the things that they were feeling and resources that they needed. And for even though it's virtual, I feel like through comments, we felt like we had a community. Like, I'm talking to somebody besides the people in the other rooms. And so I think the more that we get creative in those kind of spaces, it is a lonely space. And I mean, I had people who were like, I live by myself, so this actually isn't a good space for me at all. And so it's just so many different factors to consider that it, for some it's like, ooh, a needed break. For others, I mean, I found sanity by being around other people. And so I'm going into the fall and they're saying we might have another spread. I'm just like, Lord, I don't know. It's a lot to consider. We just take it day by day.
Yeah. What about you, Leslie? The social aspect of it, and how can CPS ensure that kids are meeting that need, that mental health illness, mental health side of it?
Yeah, it's tricky. And I just have to echo just what Dreama said, just even thinking about my own daughter. Yeah, it was a nice break. And because she was done with school and she was welcoming, the time away, when we all thought this was going to be a 3-week holiday, and it turned into a 6-month ordeal. And so, yeah, my own daughter's had her fair share of meltdowns, and we've all come to the brink of needing a strong come to Jesus conversation. And so it has been real. And now that we're opening up and now that we're in phase 4, it's been a little more relaxed, but we're still on this, this heightened awareness. With regards to my work, overseeing community school programs, it was really interesting. Our work was severely impacted, primarily because we had to receive directives from our CPS partners about how we could proceed in this virtual space. And so it was really discerning, particularly for my staff who have such strong connections with their students and their families. And so not only was our service interrupted, but just the mere ability to keep in contact with our families to see if they were okay, that was severely hampered. And so in the ways in which we've been able to reach out to them and connect with them through our community outreaches, we too have led food drives. We just led a backpack drive from our centers. And so we're finding ways to re-engage our community. But yeah, it makes me think about our Freshman Connection program at one of our schools that we hosted virtually for the first time. And it was a very interesting case study in a social emotional response in this virtual platform. And you are these students are essentially inviting you into their homes. And so there's a vulnerability also with our students participating in a virtual space. And so we had to be very sensitive and realize very quickly that we're pushing for this engagement, and we're trying to establish this community in this digital space. But yet you have students who are reluctant to turn their cameras on because they're embarrassed about their homes, or they're embarrassed about their appearance. And it's just an awkward phase anyway to be a high schooler. And so it has really caused us to be very reflective about not just the normal considerations of our SEL response, but how do we adapt this and modify this for a virtual space? And so we're all operating in uncharted territory. And so it just takes, extra diligence in conducting other forms of outreach to make sure that our families are okay.
That is something that I actually had not, in all the conversations that we've been having about this, and with our family, our friends, on TV, I'm sure in our workforces, that's something that I had not really thought about, is the fact that, some kids may not want to turn their camera on. They're forced to stay at home. They have to stay home, but for them, home is not always a good place or safe place, or a place that they're proud of. Maybe they're embarrassed, and then that leads to that. And then how does that trickle down and affect their performance in school? Bradley?
Right.
Yeah. With that said, what we had to learn when we had trouble with one of our programs, we recognized that certain kids weren't logging on, or they weren't, showing their camera, but we did some one-on-one time, calls and everything, and learned that they live in a small place, and they got multiple siblings and other people living in a smaller space, and they have no privacy. So they want to talk and they want to engage, but they don't feel safe to do it. And so it impacts them where, because they feel like, sometimes they might have the mindset that, okay, well, the schools don't care, or, I don't want them to see what I'm going through, and I'm not going to tell them. And so I'm just not going to show up for this. Or because of being busy, sometimes they fall between the cracks. And I think that, fortunately, I think we have some great relationships with some of our schools. We made a diligent effort to shift to partnering with a lot of the option schools, or alternative schools, where young people who are there, that's like either there or they're in the streets. And so those schools would have called us during the time when we were even shelter in place, and when things loosen up, to help them find these young people, because they haven't been able to connect with them. We had to go on corners and blocks and all types of things to identify them. And so I just think, with all this being said, is recognizing the differences in our kids. I know my kids, I can complain about them all day, but I could send them somewhere else in a space to do their work where I could be separate from them for a little bit. But everybody doesn't have that luxury. They don't have the peace. They don't have the quiet. They don't have sometimes the electricity. Sometimes, there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes. And again, just recognizing that and understanding it is important.
Right. And we touched on this briefly earlier, just about the fact that some kids don't even have broadband, let alone a computer. But okay, they get the computer, then how are they supposed to connect to the internet? And I know, and Leslie, you might be able to speak to this, that CPS is, and Comcast and some of these companies have really made it a point to reach out. But how do parents and students know about these resources? How do we make sure that kids are truly prepped for what they're in store for in a couple of weeks?
I think CPS is going through extraordinary efforts to contact those families that are eligible for those services. And so, to your point, there are programs out there for parents to take advantage of. And so, but if you can't reach them, then it's hard for them to know about it. And so there's like the double-edged sword, that if they're having connectivity issues, but this is where it comes, this is where partners like us and community-based organizations like ours, who are in the know about these programs, have to be on the ground promoting these services, making sure that we are making those connections. Mm-hmm. So and that's just where it comes down to. And so we understand that a lot of this just comes in a very organic and grassroots effort at that point, that we have to serve as the messengers to the CPS and to the internet service providers and say, hey, there are resources for you. And, the district is doing their best to make sure that you're connected in the fall.
Right, right. And Jarima, I feel like we talked so much about all these other organizations. I want to talk to you a little bit more too about Burst into Books and what your organization is all about and how it's really pivoting and changing and doing what it can to help students this upcoming school year.
Yeah, so I'm just listening, and I just echo everything that we have to just be very mindful that every household is unique, and what children and families need are not like one shoe fits all. And so even as we speak right now, my phone was ringing. We're doing a community grocery giveaway today in Roseland, right on 110th in Michigan, and just again just being responsive to what Leslie said. Like many of those families, they were getting their food like through the schools and through these different things, but continuing to provide those programs when they're not maybe able to go to school to get it right now. Again, I think it's a unique time when we think about the school year starting back. My program is really like, how can we continue to give kids those engagement points? And so with this remote learning, a lot of the arts and a lot of that, out of the box type thinking activities are not accessible. And so one thing I'm really excited about is that next week we're actually hosting a free financial webinar for children. A friend of mine in this virtual world, which is cool, but you can connect. She lives in Philly, and she does a lot of financial workshops for children. And she reached out to me like, hey, how can I be a part of the change in Chicago? And so she's actually doing this webinar for free. And it's for kids from ages 6 to 17 years old. And we having 2 different days of it, and it's on Zoom. And just those opportunities, because I believe that this is also a time where we're able to feed and teach our children things that maybe they wouldn't get in school, right? Maybe they wouldn't get a financial literacy course. Maybe they wouldn't have an opportunity to have kind of like, the live and lit. Like this is the opportunity for them to have those kind of spaces that they may not. I think it's a responsibility of us as organizations to not even put everything on CPS. Like what can we do to kind of supplement and be supports as well? And so we're committed to continually doing these community grocery giveaways, like the financial workshops. We also host virtual book clubs, and so I'm excited about that. That was our pivot. Everything was, of course, in person, but we're still going to do our virtual book clubs where we have guest authors. We make sure the families get books. We make sure that they are doing interactive activities online. And so using technology to still be interactive and have community. And so that's really what our work is that how can we, yes, support you academically because we do tutoring, but how can we also feed their creativity? How can we feed them building life skills, and how can we get them engaged in the community with these grocery giveaways? So if you're free day from 3 to 6 on 110th in Michigan, you should come. That's going to be an amazing, amazing time.
Today, happening now. We're on Facebook Live, right?
Right now, I ran here, my volunteers, and when I leave here, I'm going to that.
Right. It takes a village, right? And the village doesn't stop. Are there other challenges that we haven't discussed today that you feel students may face? I was sitting here listening and being a part of this conversation, but I'm thinking about when you were even, Jarima, talking about the webinar, the financial webinar, and these virtual opportunities are fantastic and it's our new way of life. But how do you engage that shy student who doesn't necessarily, speak up in that kind of setting? These are all different little challenges that, it's things that we have to think about.
I think we have to be creative in, when we think about like differentiation with learning, like the ways that they can show us that they know, like everything shouldn't have to be, because you think about even now on Zoom, if I speak out, I'm a shy student, my face is going to blast on the screen. Like it's not like I'm in the back of the classroom and I can kind of say it quietly. Everyone's going to see it full screen. So being able to give kids the option to like, hey, make a video or email it to me, or I think just having varieties and being able to show mastery, I think this gives us that opportunity being online. Everything doesn't have to be necessarily vocal. It could be, hey, create a TikTok. I don't know, whatever it is that helps you, because I can do it outside this space and you can look at it later. But you make a great point. We have to think about those personality types and those learning styles in this kind of setting.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about that, Bradley?
Well,
you work with a lot of kids.
yeah, sure. I've done, yeah. You know what? I think the main thing that's important is to, number one, know all the youth's names. So if they're on, even if it's on a live, anything, a Zoom or whatever, know their names and say their name. just so they know that you know that they're there, that they're
Mhm.
present. So they may not always, be as outgoing as, people like Jarima and other people, but they will. It's that value, and when you do that consistently, they will begin to speak up and speak out and demonstrate because they'll start to feel safe. But it starts with them knowing that you know that they're there, that they're visible, which doesn't happen a lot with young people. Sometimes we look through them, but they are real, tangible people and recognize that part of it.
Right. Leslie, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, though that shy kid on Zoom is probably going to be that shy kid in the classroom as well. And
Yeah.
so it is just meeting our kids where they are. And I agree with what Bradley said. It's just first honoring them as, contributing members of this space and that they can contribute in whichever manner they feel most comfortable. And so not everyone is going to be the most outspoken person. Not everyone's going to be in the front of the room wanting to be seen, but everyone has something great to contribute to the conversation and to the space. And it may even be something extra special for that facilitator to find that thing that really resonates with that student, and that they have this hidden talent that this is the way in which they could showcase and have their voice heard. And it is such a special thing that when that's discovered. And so yeah, our facilitators are learning very quickly that we can't force anyone to be participatory in this space. I don't even want to be participatory in this space half the time, and so I have to always have my camera on. But no, it's about creating a safe space, and also just letting everyone involved know that this is a judgment-free zone. We are all here to be supportive and respectful of our time together, and yeah, and just to create that space to know, like, okay, eventually when I feel up to it, I'll contribute.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're so right. Everyone, the teachers, students, parents, all of us are going to have to pivot, adjust, and try to make the best we can of our new normal. I want to ask all of y'all, we know that there are underserved communities as well on the north side and in the suburbs. Do any of your organizations have outreaches there, or maybe collaborations with some other communities that might be neglected that we haven't touched on today?
I can speak about. I'm sorry, Bradley. Do you want to
go? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
This is
Ladies
another
first.
Zoom. This is another one of those Zoom things where
Oh.
Should I go?
It's a video conference call. But no, I was going to say Metropolitan Family Services has 7 community centers based all throughout Chicago and the coloring suburbs. And so we have offices that do reach the North Side community as far as Skokie, Evanston. We have offices that reach as far as DuPage in Wheaton. We have our Calumet office that Jarima is familiar with that serves the South Roseland area. We go as far as Southeast, so we reach the East Side, Hegewisch, and we reach as far as the Southwest side of our city at our Midway location. And so we have a very far-reaching scope. We also reach some of the nearby South suburban areas. So we do have a very good pulse on what's happening in all areas of the city, and also being based downtown Chicago. So in our community school programs serve a large swath of the Southwest and Southeast side, and we do have schools on the North side in the Belmont-Cragen area. So yeah, we're pretty far reaching.
Yeah, well, we know it takes a village, and same for you, Bradley. What is Bill doing to help keep the village alive and floating, live and lit?
I think it's communication and offering support. So I know, like for us, we're not necessarily in the suburbs or far north, but what we do is we share what we know by educating and using our experienced staff to train any other organization or school on intervention, prevention services, all those things, that community engagement piece of work and youth, positive youth development. So we do that on a regular basis. We also support our wider community. We partner. The goal and the power of the work that we do is through our strengths of our partnerships. Partnerships with the police department. Our partnership with the police department helps the police to better understand young people in our community, and for our community and young people to better understand police, but to also cause change. Also,
more of that, that's for sure.
yeah, yeah, we need a lot of that. And I say, if anybody wants to look into the 15th district, the Austin neighborhood, awesome police district and a great model for that interaction and working with community and the effort that they're making to do that. There's still some work to be done, but I think that it's open to it. And so we've had a great relationship, as well as just partnering across the community to make sure that resources, understanding the work that we're doing, that we break down the silos, because even organizations work in silos, even with schools and everything else, everybody does their own thing. And so we've been doing a lot of work to break those down, to create engagement across the spectrum so that our residents, our kids, our families can be served.
Right. What about burst into books? What about that, Dreama? Is there any connection to the suburbs or the northern communities?
There is. And so a lot of the work that we do is on the south side of Chicago, but echoing what Bradley said, I'm so big about collaboration and partnership. And so I don't necessarily feel as if I have to be the provider of that, as long as I can connect you to what you need. And so it has been very important during this time that those community town halls, I was able to get connected with people on the north side, the west side, downtown in the Loop. Also, we from that are starting an actual organization, a coalition of organizations from different sides of the city, just because of that, right? We all have our niche, we all have our pocket. And a lot of times what is missing is that parents just really want a one-stop shop, right? Like, I know that I need this service, but we're bombarded with so many posts. Like, people are posting things on social media and online. It's like, I'm missing where that's at. So if you can be an organization I go to and you're like, hey, we don't do that, but I know if you go to this clinic, they can help you here. Or even a lot with me, like, I don't do a lot of work in the special ed per se sector. However, I have families coming to me who have kids who are autistic, who have different learning disabilities. And yet I know providers and I know educators who do those services. And so, hey, you may not necessarily get from birth into books, but I just want your child to get the service. You know what I mean? And so I think it's just important that as we're building, I'm also very aware of like, oh, what's happening in this side of town, because it may not benefit us as an organization, but it's going to benefit the community. And so I think that that's been our thing. We may not have the service, but I can connect to who can get you that.
Right. I'm getting some feedback from our Facebook followers who are watching and listening today. And some folks mentioned how their children don't necessarily know how computers work, and let alone the parents. You know, that's a very big need that has to be met. Do any of you know of any services, places, advice, where tools or website? Well, I wouldn't say websites. Well, where can they go? You know, right now we're all just trying to pull whatever information we can from where we can get it. Do any of you all know how there are some places maybe that can help in these areas?
CPS Parent University. I was just in a conversation with a representative here in Austin, and that's what they're offering for the parents, because they say that the parent needs to know how to log on, how to do everything, right, because they're going to be expected to help their kid do it as well, to get on the platforms, to sign in, all those things. And so Parent University is actually offering those classes. So pretty much every of the regions for the city of Chicago should have a Parent University. With CPS.
Parent University.
Yep.
Learn something new every day. I had never heard of that before, but that's a great resource, because well, you guys probably are way more savvy than me. I know how to talk on TV, but I'm learning a whole lot about the tech part of computers and everything that comes with it. And there were moments in the spring when my son needed to do this or look up this. And I was like, I'm relying on my kids. You know, when we were coming up, we didn't have all this. You know, this is where you're hoping your kids can teach you something, but now the roles have been reversed. And now we kind of have, as parents, had to slip into that teacher mode and learn how to do those things. Folks are talking about just the collaboration theme of focusing on needing for all of us to work on that together. And we are just about coming down about 5 minutes. So why don't we close with that? We want to end on as much of a positive note as we can. And we can talk about whatever your closing thoughts are. Uh-oh, did I lose you?
No, we see. I see.
We're still here.
You can't? Why did mine go away? There you are. Okay. See? True living proof.
Technology.
Here.
Imagine this happening in class. You're like, no, what happened?
Yes. And here I am on my work Facebook. I'm like, my computer didn't die. What's going on? But we want to wrap up on as much of a positive note as we can. And I think we at ABC7 have been using this hashtag, we're in this together. We're all in this together. So whatever advice, encouragement that you guys can leave with us today will be so much appreciated. And we'll start with you, Bradley.
Yeah, so I would say just imagine, you can't get caught up in everything that's wrong and what's not working. Draw on what is working. And also don't be afraid to ask. I feel like with everything going on, definitely with the civil unrest and things like that, I'm Black, I'm unapologetically Black, and I'm going to demand what I want. And so it's that time to do that. And so I think that that's important, and that's what I'm encouraging my people and the people around me. Stand up, and now it's time to claim it.
Ooh, you just spoke to me. Thank you. You were dropping a gem for me, did you? Jarima, final thoughts?
Yeah, my immediate thoughts is that we're all, like you said in the beginning, trying to figure it out. And what we have to understand is that we're going to figure it out together. I think that in a lot of spaces, it's this, it can be kind of intimidating. It can feel like, you don't understand. I feel like I've heard a lot of pointing the fingers, and we're going to end up in the same spaces that we're in. When it comes to the schooling, we have to work together. We have to look at our teacher as we should have already saw each other as in partnership, not as the enemy or the administrator or this organization. I think we really have to figure out how can we all contribute. I'm so big about the village mentality, and what that means is that everything you need is around you. So if you don't know it, someone else does, and that's not hoarded. That's not hoard resources from somebody that can benefit from it. At the end of the day, we all should be wanting our children and our families to succeed. So it's really going to be about us working together as a village.
Village, that village mentality. You are so right. I don't know how I could have done anything, especially as a single mother without my village from when they were very little. So you're right in not being intimidated too, because so many times, especially in these arenas where we are not tech savvy or we're not, up for whatever it is that may be presented to us because it's all new, you can't be intimidated and you have to ask those questions. Thank you so much, Jarima. Leslie, you get the pleasure of being the closer.
Oh, the pressure.
Don't be intimidated. It's just us in all of Chicago. No, I'm kidding.
It's just the four of us. The response to COVID has thrust all of us into this really uncomfortable space. And it sounds super cliche to say, but we truly are all in this together. And the one promising effect of all of this is that it is causing us to be super creative and innovative. And so it is, there is light at the end of the tunnel that we are finding ways to overcome this. It's amazing. Like I tell my husband all the time, it's so beautiful and inspiring to see humans triumph over this great this pandemic. And so we find ways to figure it out. We find ways to get around it. We find ways to overcome it. And in addition, the other layers of the things we've been dealing with, the racial unrest and the social, unrest and that kind of stuff, it has really awakened and enlivened and renewed a sense of purpose in me as a parent, as a service provider in education. And it just really has awakened just the importance of what I do and how I contribute back to my village and to other people's villages. So it's been generating some awesome work. And that's how I remain positive.
Yeah. That's all such true words, because you're right. Sometimes we look outside or we watch the news and things seem so gloomy and so cloudy, but you're right. We are in this together. We're going to get through this together. And I think, I can't remember who said it. I don't know if it was Dream or Leslie, but you said I think it was you, Leslie, they said you told your daughter that this will not last forever. And I think that's something that we constantly, as adults, children, teachers, CPS officials, whatever, we're in this together and it will not last forever, but right now we just all have to do what we can to make the change and make sure that our students get off on the right foot and continue on that right foot through this school year. Thank you so much, Bradley, Jarima, Leslie, for joining us for our 12th installment of Do You Hear Me? It's been my pleasure to be your host. We'll see you next time.